Okay guys, we are nearly there. We are coming up to the home stretch, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my most obscure books that I read in 2018. Now, it's no secret on this channel that I read some really random rubbish from time to time and have a tendency of finding books that aren't particularly highly ranked in terms of number of reads on Goodreads. These are ones that are a little bit more obscure, a little bit off the beaten track, and I thought it'd be interesting to have a look at some of those and look at what were my most obscure books of 2018 and what kind of hidden gems were down there languishing without the attention that they deserve. Now, I did this by literally going onto Goodreads, putting in number of ratings because it doesn't have number of listed, like number of times registered to be read, and then I just ranked these in kind of lowest to highest. There were some books in that list that aren't making it to this one because they were books that I didn't personally enjoy. So I've only included books here that I think were interesting and good and are worth more attention, rather than just literally the list of the most obscure, because to be honest, some of them deserve their obscurity. None of these books have higher than 2,000 ratings. I think the highest was something like 1,800 and the lowest was just underneath 200. My most obscure book that I would definitely recommend is Bloodbowl by Matt Forbeck. So Bloodbowl is a high fantasy, I guess, technically, series that's actually based off of a board game and I now think a video game. And the idea is it's what if American football but with fantasy creatures, so orcs and dwarves and giants and tree creatures and magicians and all the exciting things that you can imagine. So it tells the story of, I think his name is Dunk or Dirk or something like that, and he is a son of a disgraced nobleman and he goes to make his fortune in the Blood Bowl. His older brother is also already in the sport, and the idea is that it's just telling his tales of riches. There's a lot of underhanded work, there's, you know, people being framed and dodgy betting, and it's really a not so nice world to potentially be involved in. Now, like the name suggests, with Blood Bowl, people do die in the game and die quite regularly, so it is a brutal and bloody sport. You do not need to have any background in the board game or the video game to be able to enjoy this book, because I've played neither, I know nothing about them, but I just think that this book is fun. It is at its heart a ridiculously fun story about American football, but what if death? It's like Hunger Games smashed into American football, smashed into the Lord of the Rings. It's just incredible. Like, that Venn diagram, you know you want to get into the centre of that. The next one I have to talk about is The Flirts by Kathleen Tesoro. Now, I really like Kathleen Tesoro. She's a wonderful romance / hesitant to use the phrase, but chick lit writer, and The Flirt is her first one. I've read 3 of hers now, including this, and it is her weakest, but having said that, it was still good fun. It's a collection of characters who end up with kind of lots of interweaving things going on. There's a lot of different relationships happening there. There isn't really an overarching plot as such, it's just more of a mishmash of a fun cast of people and the way that their lives smash together. And naturally, there are romances, there are scandals, there's all sorts of things happening, and again, like with Blood Bowl, it was just a really fun book. Okay, pretty darn obscure one for you now. This is Mission by Patrick Tilley. Now, I read this because of Dad's challenge, which, if you don't know what I'm on about, I'll link it down below, but Dad challenged me to read a bunch of books without knowing what they were, and this book is totally crazy. So it tells the tale of Jesus coming back in time to 1980s New York and bumping into a lawyer and telling his story, and it turns out that Jesus is actually a kind of messenger / scout from an alien race, and it turns out that there is a big intergalactic battle happening above humanity and we are part of one side of the alien race in some way, and honestly, it was insane. If you're a big fan of high sci-fi, like really intense sci-fi with a lot of information, a lot of exposition, I would definitely recommend this book. It was, again, it was fun. The kind of middle section did get bogged down a little bit with some exposition, but it was really entertaining to read, and it was fascinating seeing how Patrick Tilley overlaid his sci-fi interpretation over the top of the story of the Bible and Jesus, because you can tell, boy, did a lot of research on that one. Okay, one that I'm hoping is going to get more attention in the future is Mageborn by Stephen Aaron. So this is book 1 of a trilogy. I think book 2 did come out recently, and I did see it on hardback in a few stores looking a little bit more prominent, so hopefully this one will be getting more attention soon. It is the second trilogy in a series. His first trilogy focuses on a war of magic. It's a high fantasy book, very classic kind of magic. I have not read that first trilogy. This is the only book of his that I've read, so I don't believe that you need to read that to be able to enjoy this one. So if this does sound cool, then definitely go for this one. This is like a decade or two after the war has happened, and things have settled down a little bit between the common folk who don't have magic and those who do, but there is definitely some tensions, some issues, and some resentments bubbling underneath. And this is just more of it's kind of a Cold War type situation where there are some underhanded moves from both sides of kind of the battle as such, trying to frame the other one or stir up trouble or try and spark an outright war again. There is a whole range of characters in this, and I think the best thing about this one is there are some absolutely incredible female characters. Stephen Aaron knows how to write a badass chick, and you should totally check it out for that. I also really liked the magic system. I'm hoping we get a bit more information about that in book 2, but it had a really intricate way of doing things, and there was like a kind of mesh webbing concept that I really liked, so it was really interesting. One I listened to on audiobook is Hold Back the Stars by Katie Khan. Now, I could have sworn that this was really big on BookTube, which made me really surprised about the lack of ratings it had on Goodreads. I don't know if I've set a few of these wrong or something, so it's only giving me like the ratings of one very specific unknown edition rather than the whole book. But Hold Back the Stars tells the story of two lovers who are astronauts, and they have come unattached from their ship and they are slowly running out of air, and it's about their struggle to try and survive. Now, mixed in with this is a massive look at the world that they live in, which is our world but kind of going for a sort of utopia type idea where your age dictates what you're kind of allowed to do, and they've decided that there is a period of time, early 20s to mid 20s, where you shouldn't be making permanent connections, you shouldn't be planning on settling down, you should be sowing your wild oats and moving around as much as you can. So to influence this, they actually force like a rotation system every kind of 18 months or so, and the underlying story is about these two lovers who met very early on in their rotation system, and it's about their battle to try and get their love recognised so that they don't have to wait until they've technically aged out of this rotation. I thought that the world building was definitely the more interesting part of this. Like, all of the stuff happening with the astronauts up in the air and their survival things was kind of cool, and there was some stuff going on, but really I thought that it was more of kind of a gimmick to pull you into this world that we wanted to explore further. The audiobook is great. I think the cast of characters are wonderful, the narration's wonderful. It is definitely really fun and a very different take to that kind of speculative fiction changing how our society operates on a real like foundational level. I'd love to go back to it and kind of maybe read it and be able to take some notes on how exactly this world is structured, so I thought it was really interesting as an idea. The next one I'm talking about is Charles McCarry's The Mulberry Bush. I read this for Thrillerathon, and it is a espionage spy style book that was excellent fun, but I had no idea what was going on at any given point. If you're really into spy or espionage books, definitely read this. My dad read it and said that it was just a good solid example of the genre with some threads that don't go anywhere because of course it's a spy novel, so not everything can, and then some stuff that tied itself together at the end. This one kind of went over my head. Like, we got to the end and there was a big reveal and I didn't really get what the big reveal was about, and I didn't really understand what was happening, but the journey there was very pleasant. It's very well written, it's an excellent example of just a good thriller, and if you do like the genre, I think that you would really enjoy this one. And that is Slugfest by Reed Tucker. Now, this is looking at the big grudge match essentially between Marvel and DC Comics as being two of the major comic book providers pretty much in history, and it spans sort of the creation of DC and then the creation of Marvel as a rival, and the ways that the two different companies have played off over the years. If you like books in any way, shape or form, especially the superhero ones, because that is what Marvel and DC specialise in, then you will find this absolutely fascinating. It covers things like the creations of some of their most popular characters, how they dealt with things like intellectual rights and copyright, and some of their team-ups, and then reasons why that probably won't ever happen again. It does go into details about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how that has impacted the comic book world, and it just generally was a really interesting look at business, but within a very specific niche sector. It wasn't heavy going at any points. There was the odd bit of repetition here or there, but I think that was actually more Reed trying to reference back to things that he talked about in maybe 2 chapters previously, that if you read this book over a longer period of time, you would need those. I binged this in about 2 days in audiobook form, which meant that I listened to about 12 hours of audiobook across about a 40-hour time period. Like, I was obsessed. It just connected with me, and I don't know why so few people have heard about this, and you should really go read it. It's awesome. And the final book that I have to talk about is One Way by S.J. Morden. So this, again, I read in Thrillathon, and this is 8 astronauts, 1 killer, no way out. As the name suggests, it is indeed about 8 astronauts who are on Mars, I believe. Yes, Mars. They are actually criminals because they are prisoners who have been recruited by an agency to build the space station that they're going to be using on Mars in the future. Now, when they get up there and start to build it, they start to find that their crew is dropping off one by one, and everybody is under suspicion because they're all murdering criminals, and it could be any of them. This was an entertaining book, but not a particularly well-crafted book. It is fairly obvious from word go who is going to be the bad guy and who is definitely the killer. I also found it very strange, the kind of juxtaposition between the characters needing to have sympathy for the main characters, but then them also needing to be murdering psychopaths to put them on Mars in the first place. And it felt quite artificial, some of the reasons why they were in prison, to make sure that they were still the good guys, but that they would also have a legitimate reason to be put in this situation in the first place. Overall, what I would say is it was fun, and I found some of the science about how you would build things on Mars to be super fascinating because, as we know, I'm a massive nerd and I love learning random rubbish. And those are all of my most obscure books of 2018. Have you read any really obscure books that you could recommend? Do you look at your Goodreads ratings and kind of see what is listed as the most obscure and what isn't? I find it really interesting. A wonderful week, have a wonderful day even, and I will chat to you soon. Bye guys!